Once you have a basic understanding of OAuth, we can look at ways that you can actually use it with a particular API. We're going to use Twitter as this example. And so here I am. This is on the Twitter developers website, which you can see up at the top, developer.twitter.com, talking about how to do authentication. Now, you can read this yourself. I'm not going to walk you through the whole thing. But what we have in here is an explanation of how you can use OAuth with the Twitter API. And there's two main ways that you can authenticate here. One is with user authentication, so a person actually gives you access to do something to their account. That's what we're going to look at how to do here. And then you can also authorize just an application itself. This is something that you'll do if you're using the Twitter API just to collect data, but not from any particular user necessarily. We're going to look at how to do user authentication. Now there's a lot of documentation here, right? You can see all of these options up at the top. But fortunately, since we're going to look at how to do this in Perl, there's a Perl library that will do that authentication for us. So if you want to see a little bit more in general of how OAuth works on Twitter, go ahead and take a look at their developer documentation. I'll link that in the description of the video so you can find it where it is now. What we're going to be using in our examples is the net Twitter library for Perl. And so this is available on CPAN, which is what we're looking at here. And again, I'll put this link in for everybody. The overview here is big and long, but what we want to look at is the synopsis. So I'm going to make that a little bit bigger. Because what we can see in this section here is everything you need to know to do OAuth on Twitter through Perl, which is not that much, fortunately. So we've seen this before in class, using this with Twitter. But what we're doing here is creating a new object that's stored in this variable NT. And you can see we're using the library, and then this arrow new means we're creating a new object. And we're passing some information when we create that. This just says that we're using this version of the API, this first line traits. And then we have 4 lines, the consumer, key, and secret, and the access token and secret. These you have to get from Twitter, but they're going to be the things that allow you to authenticate. So basically you just put those keys and secrets in here in your code, and the Twitter package here, net Twitter, takes care of all of the requests and signing and token acquisition. So you don't have to do any of it, which is wonderful. So how do we get that consumer, key, and secret, the access token and secret? You can see right here there's just variable names in place. You can put those variables higher up in your code and set them equal to the values, or you can just replace these variables with a string that actually has the keys and secrets in it. To get these, you have to set up a developer account at Twitter. I have that window open here. So if you go to apps.twitter.com, it's going to take you to your app. This is the main page for an app that I have set up for this account that I use for testing purposes. And at the top, there's a tab called Keys and Access Tokens. And when you click on that, you're going to see that there are application settings and access tokens. And these are named exactly like what's in the documentation we just looked at for the Twitter library. So we have a consumer key and a consumer secret, an access token, and an access secret. Now I have mine blocked out because if anybody can see these, they can use them to make their own applications. So obviously we don't want that to happen. If you don't have an access token, you probably have a button here to generate one. And if anything happens, you do too many requests, somebody gets a hold of your code and starts sending requests, you can always regenerate these codes by clicking on this button, Regenerate Consumer Key and Secret, and there's one for the access tokens. So basically you're just going to copy and paste these values into the code over here. So if we show those side by side, we can see that the Perl is asking for the consumer key and secret, which come from here, and the access token and access token secret, which are down here. So you'll just copy and paste those values from your Twitter, apps.twitter.com account, and put them into your code here. Once you do that, you could actually copy and paste this whole block of sample code into your own document and run it. It'll actually do what it has to do. As a reminder, If you want to post, which is what that sample code does, you want to make sure under permissions in your app, which we can click on that tab, that you have read and write permissions. Sometimes it's set to read only by default, so make sure you change that to read and write if you want to be able to post to your account using Twitter. So this is the great thing about a lot of really popular APIs, is that there is a Twitter library that will do OAuth for you, and all you have to do is be able to access your keys and pass them in.